China has announced it will shut down all licensed ivory factories and retailers by the end of December 2017. Although ivory sales have dropped since China's State Council announced a partial ban on December 30th of last year, an estimated 50 African elephants are still killed every day for their tusks. Last year, a record 40 tons of ivory were seized worldwide, triple the amount in 2007. How big of a difference will China's total ban make in saving the world's elephants? And how can consumer behavior be better regulated and worldwide awareness be raised? Welcome to The Point. I'm Dong Shi, in for Liu Xing today. Our discussion will be co-hosted by CGTN Beijing and CGTN Nairobi. First, despite global efforts, why is the ivory trade so hard to regulate? And what is the impact on the African elephant population? Let me hand over the discussion to my colleague Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Karen, thanks for joining us. Good to see you there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Zhong Shi. Well, that announcement made by China banning the trade in ivory has had a positive impact on the wildlife here in Kenya. CGTN's Robert Nagila has that story for us now.
It was one of the most significant decisions in recent times to impact the protection of Africa's elephant population. On December 30th, 2016, China announced it would eliminate the processing and sale of ivory by the end of this year. Months earlier, Kenya had made history, destroying its entire stockpile of more than 100 tons of illegal elephant ivory and rhino horn. Kenya welcomed the decision by China and the United States to ban ivory trade. Kenyan officials credit the ban with a decrease in poaching activity in the country.
It made it very difficult for people to really now go on to poaching, because then they know they have to deal with transiting, which is also a big problem. Then they discover that the country to which they're trying to take is actually intending to stop.
In 2014, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang signed a memorandum of understanding that would see China support Kenya's wildlife conservation efforts. Kenya received a donation of 18 vehicles worth close to $700,000, night vision equipment and binoculars towards the effort. With ivory markets and transit routes gradually shutting down, Kenya is beginning to reap the benefits. This year, the country has recorded a decline in poaching activity targeting elephants and rhinos compared to the last 3 years.
So working through Interpol, working through CITES, we were able to now put a stop so that then people know that whatever exit entry points, that they will be under watch. And that's the reason why the airport supports now became very instrumental. So these countries, when you see the two countries now standing side by side and saying we want to stop this trade, and this happened, you know, with the US and China, was a very big boost.
In 2014, a survey funded by Microsoft founder Paul Allen indicated that almost a third of Africa's savanna elephants were wiped out between 2007 and 2014 by poachers. Kenya now says it is witnessing an increase in its wildlife population once again. And as the ban on ivory trade by China comes into effect, incidents of poaching may be few and far between in 2018. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, let's get you more perspective now on that story. I'm joined online by Jim Justice Nyamu. He's the Executive Director and founder of the Elephant Neighbours Centre. Thank you very much for joining us, Justice. How vital is it for Kenya and Africa to end the international trade in ivory?
Thank you very much for the invite, and thank you very much for the wonderful show. Yeah, the only thing that affects the African elephant basically is because of the presence of the trade. And the aspect of the trade, as you've highlighted before, is something that requires a global attention. And we are very, very happy joining other wildlife organizations in appreciating what the China have done when they promise they're going to end the trade. Because as it has been depicted and recorded that they were hosting the largest number of the carving industries So this is something that we do not just welcome like that. It is something that we feel that other countries need to follow suit, because the only thing that is making elephants die every day is basically because of the trade, because elephants are being killed, and I just learned that about 50 elephants are dying every day in Africa, and this is purely because of the poaching.
Well, as you say, other countries need to follow suit, Justice. How encouraged are you by China's announcement to end the ivory trade?
It is quite encouraging, and I am saying this. I just landed from London last night, where I was conducting a walk from London to Bristol, about 250 miles, and I was invited in the House of Lords, where they were in the debate on the same, because United Kingdom happened to be the second from America now as a source of as the largest domestic illegal trade, but then they are doing antique and other businesses on the trade. So what I'm saying, the China have set a goal that needed to be followed by other countries. And when I mean other countries, France comes in like the fourth country. America is the second now. When the China close business, America will be the only country taking lead, and they must come together and appreciate what China has done, and not only by appreciating, but also by following them, and also the aid trade back in their countries.
Okay, let's talk about raising awareness. What should we be doing there to make people aware that so many elephants are being killed just for their ivory?
Yeah, thank you. You know, back home here, where I have done quite a number of awareness campaign walks, walking across the Africa, East Africa, and here in Kenya, what I've been doing, I've categorized this awareness into two levels. One, talking to the poachers, because those are the poachers, the local communities, trying to tell them, in as much as we kill our elephants because of the trade which they don't understand, we need to understand that the wildlife belongs to us, and whenever we kill them, particularly this is their numbers. What I have learned is most of people here, including even the government, they have no idea how many elephants we have, and they have this notion that whenever you see in the forest, there is elephants there. So I've really depend on the support from the local organizations, even NGOs, the interior government, to reach to the communities through their local establishment leadership, like chiefs, to hold community meetings when I'm walking. And this has yielded a lot of benefit, I would say so, because in the beginning, the government came in it and have supported me by even implementing the basic law that we are now enjoying in Kenya, the new wildlife bill that has brought in community to the light to understand that they not only need to conserve these elephants, but they have also an opportunity to participate in wildlife conservation.
Okay,
The other thing.
Sorry, you mentioned the government and NGOs there. How important is it for authorities in Africa and the Far East to work together to stop this poaching?
It is very important, and we don't have time to do this because we are running out of time because of the pressure of, you know, we're dealing with attitude here. So NGOs, and particularly those that are doing wildlife agencies or wildlife conservation, we have so many international local NGOs, the WWF, the IFOs, the Born Frees. Most of these institutions, they work independently, and it is the high time they back the government agencies like Kenya Wildlife Service, TANAPA, or Tanzania National Wildlife. They must support these organizations, and the government has really empowered these institutions. But unfortunately, Kenya Wildlife Service, as the spokesman says, they cannot work independently. They need the support from the NGOs, they need support from the community leaders, and they need support from even the larger community as well.
Okay, Jim Justice Nyamu, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your thoughts on that. He's the Executive Director and founder of the Elephant Neighbours Centre. Well, elephant poaching is not just a problem for Kenya. South Africa's Kruger National Park is the country's most famous wildlife reserve. The park hosts a large elephant population, and animals like rhino are also being slaughtered. CGTN's Rennie Del Carme recently spent time in the Kruger with the people on the front line in the fight against poaching, the game rangers. Take a look.
This is a mock operation of a typical poaching contact which Sandparks rangers encounter on a daily basis. The rangers have worked with the military since 2010 and rely heavily on their pathfinding, tracking and battlefield surveillance expertise.
3 poachers arrested. Please send the police quickly over. Very, very dangerous situation because the live firearms are being shot there. Rangers are always at risk of being shot. Your main aim is to apprehend those people. You don't want to shoot them, you don't want to kill them. But we find ourselves sometimes returning the fire just to protect ourselves from them.
Despite the relentless efforts of poachers and wildlife crime syndicates, Sandparks believes that it is making headway in reducing the number of animals being killed in the Kruger National Park. And it attributes much of the success to its joint anti-poaching operations with the South African police and the military.
We've got good cooperation with the military. We're working together in dealing with the situation on the ground. And of course, our people, I'm talking about the rangers, have been trained along that line, of the military as well.
The operations in the Kruger Park is very successful, hence you can see a decline of rhino poaching because of the integration and collaboration of strategies, of plans and of resources.
Authorities say although the military has boots on the ground in the Kruger, the park remains first and foremost a conservation and tourist-friendly environment.
We are committed to ensuring that we protect our animals, our parks, and of course ensuring the safety of our people or the tourists when they visit here.
We are here in our role to protect and to safeguard our country. So even if the tourists see us here, they must know that they are protected and they can enjoy the Kruger National Park and the natural resources that is here.
Renad Al-Kham, CGTN in the Kruger National Park, South Africa.
Well, the statistics are quite worrying for elephants in Western and Central Africa. They're at imminent threat of extinction. That announcement was made back in November by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, known as CITES. CGTN's Beryl Uoro has that story.
In 2011, a staggering 30,000 African elephants were killed for their ivory. That surge led to a more concerted global effort to stop the trade of illegal ivory.
Now what we're seeing in 2017 is we've had 5 consecutive years where the overall level of poaching has declined. It hasn't declined fast enough. We still have too many elephants poached across the African continent. But what we are seeing is significant improvements in some regions, in particular in Eastern Africa. We're back to pre-2008 levels of poaching, but we still see serious problems in Central and Western Africa, and this is where we still have an imminent risk of local extinctions because we haven't managed to get the poaching under control in those areas.
But the illegal killings of elephants in certain regions have been exceeding increases in population rates. That means more elephants are dying than being born, and urgent action is needed.
In Western Central Africa, we need to move very fast right now, so we need to move over the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So it's not something you can wait and say, let's see what happens. We need to continue to move right now. Otherwise, they are at threat of imminent extinction, which means in the foreseeable future, which means not too far away, a few years away. I can't put a precise date on it, but, you know, it's an imminent threat, and that's what we're saying. We have to go in there hard now.
In more than 24 countries, wildlife crimes are now treated as serious crimes. Offenders face years in prison for killing animals, buying ivory, or facilitating its trade.
So what we've seen is a great effort across source countries, transit countries and destination countries to play their bit. Domestic markets are being closed, laws are being strengthened. At the demand end, we're seeing people go to jail 5, 10, 15 years for illegally trading in ivory. So there are many measures underway right across the board dealing with supply and demand, and it's starting to have an impact.
And that's led to record seizures of illegal ivory across the world. But weak law enforcement in some countries means the problem persists. And only through a global effort can the African elephant be saved. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, China's ban on the ivory trade is an encouraging sign that the Chinese government remains committed to the protection of elephants in Africa. But it's not just elephants that are in danger. African wildlife authorities need more support to combat poaching in all its forms, to ensure that these animals are still around for future generations to enjoy. Back to you, Zhongshu.
Karen, thank you. Now joining me in our Beijing studio is Zhao Zhonghua, Country Director of World Animal Protection in China. Mr. Zhao, welcome to The Point today.
Thanks.
Let me begin by asking this. Since the end of last year, when China made that announcement, at that time it was hailed as a historic announcement from China, yes, a potential game changer for elephants in Africa. What has happened since the end of last year? What has happened to China's market for ivory, the trade itself, and China's demand?
Well, the impact is dramatic. The ivory price in China dropped half. The price is dropped half, and also has an impact on Vietnam market. The price dropped 2/3. So the announcement by China coincided with also UK's take action, also ban the market, and also US didn't lift the ban for hunting trophy. So the whole impact is tremendous. The price significantly dropped. However, we are monitor the situation. The actual poaching in Africa has not significantly dropped yet. But the first step is already quite effective.
Well, it's interesting because one of the reasons that China put this ban into place is to help with protecting this species to reduce the elephant poaching in Africa. Would you say that hasn't been achieved so far? And what were the reasons behind what you were just talking about, the poaching still going on in Africa?
Yes, exactly. I didn't say it's not effective yet, but the effect actually in Africa has not been seen yet. I think because this is an international joint effort, like different countries were building a fence to protect the elephants. So every country, all countries must work together. As we are going to talk like Japan, the government didn't take any action, and it could become a loophole to continue to make a negative effect on elephant protection.
Hold that thought. I'm going to get your take on Japan in just a minute. But I want to talk to you about a particular industry in China that will no doubt take a blow from this ban, the antiques industry. We're talking about ivory carvers. We're talking about craftsmen who will essentially see their livelihood taken away from them with this ban in implementation. Do you think that they are bracing for what's to come?
That is a good question. According to my observation or organizations observing, actually the ivory carving or producing industry compared with the Chinese economy is tiny. And because of all these years, animal protection organizations, the government, through all kinds of communication, people's awareness is very high. Many people, they are fine. They want to, people do not believe this is a very kind industry. So as you say, the famous collector Ma Weidu said, collection should not be built on cruelty. So this industry, the entrepreneurs, the workers, many of them, the awareness is changing, and some of them, they are happy to give up. Some of them, with the help of government, they are looking for new jobs.
I want to talk to you about countries in China's neighborhood, other Asian countries that might have seen their markets grow because of a growing appetite from China. You mentioned Vietnam there, of course, and Vietnam and Laos are now some of the world's fastest growing markets for ivory.
Yes.
How much of their markets come from a demand from China? Because what we do know is that you can put in a ban overnight, but you can't exactly kill the demand. You can't exactly kill the appetite immediately. To what extent will the Chinese demand spill over to markets in other Asian countries?
Okay. As I mentioned, because the whole different countries, the whole region is interconnected. So China completely bans the ivory market, and the demand level in China is definitely dramatically decreased. But the market, the demanding is not just from China. Like Japan is also demanding ivory. They have those kind of traditional hanku stamps, like use it for signature. Many of them are made from ivory products. So we mentioned Vietnam. Vietnam is just a processing place. The demand is not high yet. So the demand comes from Japan and also, of course, come from China. And in China, because all the ivory trade and the factories are illegal. So this kind of, but Japan is still legal. So many of the processing will be shifted to Japan. There are already research data shows there is an increase in the Japanese market. And also there are smuggling coming from Japan to China as well.
You seem to suggest that Japan is a very important link in this ivory trade in the region of Asia and maybe even in the world. Let's talk about Japan, because this country has long been criticized for its rather lax regulation and policies when it comes to the trade of ivory. Why hasn't Japan joined the ranks like China, like the United States or the UK in restricting ivory trade?
Yes, you know, Japan as a country, it still allows the ivory trade inside Japan. They legally didn't ban it completely. So some of the retailer online platforms, they take some action, like Rakuten, but it's just voluntarily. But other platforms, they are openly selling ivory products, like Yahoo Japan. So about your question, why they are still doing this? Just 2 months ago, the Reuters reporter interviewed the CEO of Yahoo Japan. His argument said this is a traditional culture, it takes time, whatever. But of course, this is not a credible reason, because if you talk about culture, the ivory culture in China is much longer than Japan. And also, if culture can become an argue point, the American people can also say it's their culture, because they also hunt in Africa, they bring back trophies, they also claim it's culture, and other countries as well. I believe it's the Japanese people still lack of awareness of animal protection, and the government didn't pay enough attention to it. It's interesting, because Japan is very advanced in many aspects, like technology, environmental things. But for animal protection, it seems Japan is still quite detached to the rest of the world. As I mentioned, like Yahoo Japan, they are not only selling ivory products, they are also selling whale and dolphin meat, openly selling in Yahoo Japan. This is incredible. Culture, it cannot be an excuse, and culture cannot be built on cruelty, and cannot be built on the sacrifice of elephants and whales.
I want to get your thoughts on these data, because according to the World Wildlife Fund, 2.4 tons of ivory, including antiques and jewelry, were illegally exported from Japan between 2011 and 2016. And 95% of these exports go to China. You talked about the reasons behind Japan's rather lax regulation and policies, but will Japan's attitude towards this issue threaten China's ban?
It's definitely. It's like we are like international communities building a fence to protect elephants, but Japan opened a loophole there. So it's a threat to the ban. It undermines the ban of China and all other countries. The reason why so many ivory products smuggled from Japan to China? It's because in China it's illegal to the markets. Ivory markets are illegal in China, but Japan is still legal. So that's why it was. Of course, I'm not sure if it's so high, 95, maybe not. For that data, maybe we need to further check. But I mean, Japan itself is a market. And many products can also smuggled out from Japan to China, Korea, South Korea, and other countries if Japanese government doesn't want to take any action to it.
You mentioned the awareness level is poor in Japan, but what about the awareness level in China? Are you happy with how people are aware of the cruelty involved in the ivory trade? Because a lot of people simply don't know that elephants are killed and slaughtered in order for their tusks to be made into ivory in the first place.
Okay. I think that what I have witnessed and I have seen is the awareness of Chinese public is actually very high, and also the awareness among public, among the government and senior policymakers is very high, very high. Because for China to make the decision to completely ban the ivory industry, that is a courageous and a significant decision. But it was made, and it was supported by the public, and even the famous ivory collectors, as I mentioned, they all support it.
Exactly how difficult was that decision? Talk to us about some of the other factors that authorities had to take into consideration before reaching that decision.
That's definitely very difficult position, because the ivory trade industry in China is much bigger than in Japan, and it's a long history and a lot of money and a lot of workers. But China still can do it. The government do it, and the people support it. That shows the awareness of the public, and the awareness of the government really is taking genuine, courageous action to protect elephants. So, I mean, for Japan, it's basically about the level of awareness and the level of their attached to the rest of the world.
All right, Mr. Zhao, I want to thank you for your insight. Great discussion. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point. I'm Zhong Shi in Beijing. Thank you so much for your company.